Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's January 20th. This is our chart lesson for today, and this is we'll wrap up our week. As most of you know now, I don't do a chart lesson on Fridays, and not because I don't trade or anything on Fridays. I usually come in and try to trade a little bit in the morning, and but it takes a lot more than most people realize to do this video every day. It's an hour to 2 hours of my time every day. So I like to get done early on Friday. So that's the main reason, just to get a break from these. I mean, I've been doing these things for 10 years now. So you think about it. One time I was doing them 5 days a week or pretty much every trading day. And it just got to be so much that I was starting to get burnt out on it. So doing it 4 days a week um, feels about right, and giving me an extra day on Friday and letting me get out here early. That's the reason that I don't do them on Friday. So if any of you are new and hadn't heard me say that, I thought it was worth saying again. But let's look at the chart and get through the trades. There's quite a few of them today. So there's not a whole lot this afternoon. There was a huge downtrend, but there's not a lot of good opportunities to get in it. Uh, there's a couple of green ones, and there's a couple that are really good entries if you caught them. So, but we'll talk about those shortly. But we had the blue channel, and it looked like maybe we folded over into this yellow channel. So this is probably, you could look at this as a spike and channel up. But in the end, if you look at the blue channel, let's just move this for a second. If you look at the blue channel, we do get a break and two perfect, I mean to the tick measured legs up, and it reverses. And if you go with the yellow spike and channel, it looks very valid here. But as you can see, you get a break here and you never get a retest. So, I mean, the yellow was still helpful because it really helped you with these couple of trades here. So I think it was worth looking at it and using it. But in the end, I really think the blue one's correct. And this is a good example. We know that once we get a break here, that the odds are we'll probably get a retest with two legs up. But how do you know it's going to be two legs like this? You don't. That's just it. All we know is that we're expecting a retest of the high, and generally it's two legs up. So we could have been done after we got this leg and pulled back in the second leg. But no, the market wasn't done. We corrected for actually from about 9 o'clock to almost 9:30, and then we bounced off and confirmed this yellow trend line and took off and made a perfect measured move up on it before we turned down. And then you had your two, so you got a break and two legs up. But so this is where, while you can't just be a pattern reader and you can't box this into perfect rules, because the key is when it's over and when it's going to start. When is the retest going to start and when is it going to end? We don't know the answer to that. We have to learn to follow the price action. You have to draw these other trends and channels, and it's a skill. And over time, and that's why you can't learn this. I mean, if you could just memorize some rules and the patterns, you could learn to do this probably in a month or two, but it's not that easy. However, once you do learn to read this chart, it gets so much easier. It gets so much, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's never going to be easy, but it gets a whole lot easier, and you'll get much more skilled at it, and you'll have much more success. But that might be, if you're lucky, that might be a year and a half to 2 years. For some of you, it might be 5, 6, 7 years, and some of you may learn the rules and be able to read this chart and be very good at it, but never have the mental capacity. I shouldn't say mental capacity, because it doesn't mean you're not smart enough. What I'm getting at is you may not have the discipline and the mental fortitude that it takes to be a trader. That's part of the skill. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but this was just such a great example of why people think that, hey, I got a break and two legs up here, and I thought we were going to go the other way. The next thing you know, it was racing higher. Well, yeah, it wasn't really a break in two legs yet, because you can see that break right there of this trend line, and then we rocketed up one leg, and then we rocketed up a second. And I mean, it's a perfect measured move to the tick, and that doesn't happen by accident. You can go back and look at chart lessons from for years where I've shown you prices do this stuff. And so use these measured moves because they can be very helpful to you. And if you, I didn't even look at these other two, but I bet you if you measure them, so we came up short on that one, which would have been a good clue that we're probably going to correct a good bit more here. And in fact, not only did we correct, this thing took off down, but you still got two legs in this one. They're just not measured. And when you don't reach a target, that's telling you something. It usually means you're going to go much further and harder in the other direction. So just keep that in mind. Okay, let's get to the trades here. 7 o'clock came right in here, and you had to be patient today because we're working down here. You're not quite back to the blue trend line. And so, and you're still in this short term. I didn't color this one, so maybe it's a little hard to see. Let's color it a little darker there. And that's your first break. And there's a good chance you're only going to retest the low, which prices tried, but they couldn't really get a good close outside the trend line. You need a convincing close, not just a breakthrough or closing right at it or maybe slightly over. You need a convincing close outside, and that didn't come till here. And then you got the two legs up and it reversed. So there's no real reason to go long here. This was real tempting, I'll tell you. But it's not technically a failure, and it's just a first entry. So we wait. It looks like you're going to get a second entry. Let me zoom in a little more. I'm sorry. You can't hardly even see that. It looked like, hey, we're going to get a second entry right here, and that we may get a good setup. What happens? No, it doesn't break higher, and it just chops sideways. So just wait. There's actually a little spike and channel down, and then we bounced and took out of there. And again, there's no setup, and that's a great move, and you hate to miss it, but there's no setup there. So it goes without us. There's a little higher low here, but it doesn't really break lower. And so, I mean, there's too much resistance right there. I don't trust that trade. And you see, whenever you see a bar with no body that looks like a doji almost, and then you get one inside that, be very leery of it, no matter how good it looks. In this case, it took off. But I'll show you some that look very good that don't take off. Here's one right here. It looks like we're really going to go lower here. And of course, you got confirmed congestion here with some clear support before this ever sets up. So this one's not quite as good an example, but I think that we'll see one before it's over. And just be very wary when you see that type of bar and then the next one's inside and it looks really good. Yeah, it moved on higher today, but we were in an uptrend and it was just coming off the trend line. So that's a little different, but I still don't like that trade and wouldn't take it and wouldn't mark it. So this looks like a double bottom, so that just looks like a first entry. You might have looked at that as a failure, but it didn't break lower. So I still don't like it. But we run up and then we come back and we get our first break here and we draw that trend line off and it fits right across there. We don't know that it's going to come back here again and bounce, but we draw it just in case. And sure enough, that's where it bounces later on. So we know. But notice how we made that low. We tested it once and we come back and test it twice right off what looks like a trend line there. And that's technically not a second entry, but there's two legs back right there. I like going long there because you're guaranteed they trap some shorts that think they're going to be smarter than everybody else and go short right into that support. We talked about that either yesterday or the day before. You know, and I've talked about this at least once this week, and then people will come in and ask that same question in the forum. I hope everybody watches the videos. I guess maybe everybody doesn't. I know some people try to take shortcuts and just come in here and look at the trades and they don't really listen to what I'm saying and they don't really follow along. And you're missing a lot if you're doing that. So if you're one of those that just come in here and open the chart and look at all the trades and then compare it to yours and close it up, you're doing yourself a disfavor. Listen to what I describe and why I like it or don't like it, and you'd be surprised. You'll probably learn something from it. So just keep that in mind. But this was a great trade, and if you catch this, you get to catch this whole move all the way to the highs before we turn back down and come back to the trend line again. I mean, that's exactly where I would have looked to exit, right up in here, a little before this move and a little before this trend channel. And if you do that, you catch this whole move. Because that's where you would expect it to go, from this trend line to the trend channel line. And actually, I probably might have had this a little bit lower here originally off of those two swings. I'm pretty sure I probably adjusted that one slightly. And somebody else asked me that question, they wanted to watch my trading because to see how I adjust my chart. Very rarely do I adjust these trend lines and trend channels. And if I do, I usually discuss it just like I did there. So you'll know. But believe it or not, you'll learn, this is a skill, and you'll learn to draw these trend lines, these trend channels, and you won't adjust them very often. Yeah, every now and then you don't quite know where the channel's going to, but really drawing the trend lines, very rarely did I ever move my trend lines or change them. And very rarely do I even move my trend channel line. But sometimes you do, because it goes further than you think, and you find out that it's further out there. Just like here, it was a little further out than what I thought off those first two swings. And this may be an overshoot. I don't know. It didn't really act like an overshoot because it bounced right off that trend line again. But it could have been an overshoot. And I just didn't see anything I liked up through here. This is a reversal right off the EMA. I didn't mark this one because it looks so congested, but I'm going to tell you, that's hard to pass up. And if you took it, I wouldn't blame you. But I didn't want to mark it. Actually, it should be below that bar because the failure occurred when it broke above the red bar, let me zoom back in here. The failure occurred when it broke above that bar. But you can see prices made a lower swing here than there. So you get a first entry, try to go higher, and you get a second entry. It fails, and look how it bounced right off that EMA. I like going long right there. And that's another quick, easy move. And if you weren't already in, you got another runner going. And where is it probably going to go? To this measured move. And you probably would have measured this first one and then measured one. So it probably would have been a little lower there. And when I get to talking a lot, my throat starts bothering me. I'm sorry, but I may have to pause it here every now and then and clear my throat. But that trade's not one to, if you took it, I like it, but I didn't originally mark it. But you generally want to see these at the key entry point, but there's some reasons to assume we're going higher here. And of course, once we get there, we start working back to the other side. I didn't mark any shorts here because I don't see any I like. This one's a possibility, but you had your blue trend line right here, and you see it bounced off of it to begin with. So it could have gone higher there. So you don't want to risk going short. Now, when it broke higher and turned down and went through right there, if you've got enough room to get out, yeah, maybe you take that trade on the engulfing bar. But I wouldn't take it right here because you don't have much room, and you see how it bounced. It ended up going lower, but there's no guarantees it could have gone higher. We do get a second entry here, but not a very good signal bar. Of course, you got matching lows here, but this is right into the EMA, and I would assuming now that, hey, the yellow channel is where we're coming back to. Everything's lining up for that. Of course, you do get a second entry short here, but you got to go short right into that EMA. It wasn't back to the trend line here. We did get a little close outside here too and already have a new low, so it could go higher from here. So again, this is just not a very high probability trade. Sure, it's a second entry short, and you might have looked at it as a first entry, second entry, but the failure would have been right here, and that would have failed on you. So, it's a possibility. It's another one. There's always going to be some that you could argue for to be green, and there may be some, like this one, you might even argue for it to be blue. You may not always see it exactly like me. I'm probably going to take less risk than you guys, than most of you will, because I'm more experienced in this and I've learned my lesson. I've learned that it's so much easier if I just wait on the good trades. And I had that conversation in the forum today too. I just said that, you're better off to pick the best 2 or 3 trades, and then somebody came right in behind me. And I'm not chastising this person, so don't think, I'm just using this as an example. And they said that they wanted to add some few more trades to your repertoire. Well, are you trading because you like taking trades and you want to have a bunch of trades to take, or are you trading to make money? Hopefully your goal is to make money and you're not trading for the thrill of trading. And if you want to make money, you don't need to add more trades to your repertoire. You just need to learn the easiest ones, and then as you get more skilled, you can add more. But don't rush it, because you're just going to fail and cost yourself money. It took me a long time before I started adding reversal trades. Long time, years. probably more than 5 or 6, 7 years before I started adding that trade consistently. But my skill got better and I started to learn to understand it and see it better, and so I started marking it. But anyway, we bounce here off the yellow line. You get a higher low here, but this is an inside bar. This is your signal bar. You can't take that. Then you get another one here and it breaks lower and turns up and you get that trap. Look how good that second entry short looks. But if you're reading this chart and you know what's going on, you know not to go short there. You're just waiting. And when it fails, you go long right there and boom. And you might have even, normally I would say you might even look at this as a higher low after the failure, but you got that trend line and you can see it's holding still. So don't go long there. Even though it worked, it could have failed on you. Then we run up, turn down and come back to the trend line. There's a second entry right here, but this is not a good place to take a second entry. Not at all, especially when you're looking for this measured move based on this move. Because that's what I'd be looking for now, going back to the other side of the yellow channel on a measured move. So, like I said, you don't want to take a second entry right there. It's below the midline. It's not back to the EMA. There's just so many reasons. But when it gives you a failure here, actually it comes back and it makes this double bottom, and then it gives you a failure. Then I like going long. And still, this one was right there near that resistance, but it pushed through first, then pulled back, and it trapped people. Guaranteed, it's almost guaranteed it's going to go higher because we're looking for it to go to this other side of the channel anyway. It's right off the midline. That is the first close outside on the blue channel. So you're probably going to make a new high. If this hadn't have pushed higher and made a new high, I'd be more leery of this. And you could still almost argue for this to be green. But that failure there is going to guarantee trap people trying to pick highs. But you got to be careful going long into resistance. But this is not a range. This is not proven resistance where it's turned down multiple times. This is a trend. And so in some cases, there's times where you'll risk a trade like this. And this is a good example of it. People will say, well, give me an example. Well, this is an example. That's not a range. This is not a range. Look at it. Hopefully you can see this is not a range. Now right here, there's a lot of resistance across there. You got to be careful going long into these highs. But this is a different story right here. We're trending and we're on the way higher to the other side of this channel. So we run up there. Where do we go? Perfect measured move right to the other side of the channel, and then we're working lower. But again, this is a strong trend. You don't want to risk going short because this really looks like the first convincing close outside, and you got one leg up. We may make another leg up. You don't know. So you just kind of sit tight, and you have to get a good setup. And that, even though it's a lower high, and the odds are we're going lower, that's not a good setup. Now, there is a failure right here, and you are expecting a new low on this. So that's one that you could at least argue to be green. I didn't like taking a short at all because you see it bounced early here and went higher. And it could have done that just after you entered there. So it's risky shorting on a good, strong trend day. And this has been a strong trend day. And this yellow channel is still in play. So I'm waiting on prices to come back to it at this point in time. I marked that one green. And then we went up here. This moved on me a little bit. Let's adjust it just a hair. We went back higher. We tried to go higher once, twice. So there's a failure right there. The only reason I didn't make this one red was because it's still above the EMA and it's an uptrend and it looks a little sideways. There's not really the doji. This is close. There's still a lot of stems and stuff in there, and there's 3 bars stacked side by side, but that's not really close. I mean, it's close to a doji, so you got to be careful with it. But when prices broke higher 3 times there and failed, guaranteed there's going to be some trap longs. And you can tell this was a trap because look at it. That's what a trap looks like when it triggers. It rockets down real fast, and that's what it did right there. It's running all the long stops, and people that are just finally figuring out it's an uptrend day up in here, and they're too late. The moves are all over. They're looking at their indicators that are finally saying, hey, it's time to go long, when all you got to do is look and draw your trends, and there they are. And instead you can get in down here instead of waiting until an indicator says, hey, you might be start looking for a long, and they start looking for a long, and this is what happens to them. So, but we do come down, we get your first close outside the yellow. So, hey, we'll probably get a retest of the high. That's what I'm expecting. But I want to see a good setup. And you get a reversal here, but it's not ideal. Um, this is enough to say, hey, if there's room to get out before the trend line in this swing here, I'll probably take it. But it comes up, makes a high, then makes a lower high. So now you got a triple test there, failed second entry long, and a big bearish bar. I like going short, and you can see it's confirming that trend line. We really confirmed it here. Now you've double confirmed it. Got a triple test on it. So I like going short there. And if you catch that, that's a pretty good move. It does come back and looks like we're going to kind of go sideways. But notice that you made another double top up here. You're working up. You get a close outside. You try to make a new high. Then you try to make another new high. And it makes a double top. If you got room to scalp out between here and there, take that short. Just trying to get a scalp out of it coming back to the EMA. And of course, it drops down, pulls back, and gives you a failure right there when it breaks higher and turns and goes out the other direction. We're probably going to make that new low. And there is room. I don't think I'd wait till here to go short because you're right into that bottom. And it could, and you see it does bounce. It doesn't matter. But the way I would trade this would be on the engulfing bar. And you got to be careful with them, especially with those 2-bar matching lows right there. You might even let it break lower and see if it backs up and try to get a little better entry there. And just like always, when you push through the EMA, it pulls back and tests it before it goes further. Right here, look at, we push through the EMA, the midline, it pulls back and tests it before it goes higher. And that's what happens here. You push through the midline, pull back and test it. Prices are always testing that support and resistance. And that's what you'd want to see before you went short there if you had a setup. And you might look at that as a failure, but it's not off the EMA. And we moved quite a bit, and then this is an inside bar, so I don't like that trade. I don't like taking anything else down through here. And then we're working sideways. The bias is down now. We do have a break in a new low, so you got to be careful, but you can see we made that high. We came back and tested it, and then we made a double test of it. So that's a triple test or a double test of this high, however you want to word it. It breaks higher and fails and turns down. I like going short there. I don't know if I'd wait till down here. There's still room if you did. You would have gotten out, but I'd probably trade this on the engulfing bar. Or I'd wait and see if we got a lower high, which we get right here. And again, you got enough room to get out. Doesn't matter. It continues to go down. It does bounce momentarily. That's right into the midline. But I still like that trade. We've been coming off the highs and going to lows, and coming off the lows and going to highs. So, it's tempting to go long right here, but I'd wait on a higher low since we made a new low. And you get a higher low here, but that's congestion. That's not rejection of prices, even though it breaks out and goes higher. It's not a very good setup. We run up here and get a breakout that, of course, we would expect to fail. And then you make a lower high right here. And this is actually a second entry short, too. It's not clearly 2 legs up, but it is 2 attempts to go higher. It fails, and you can see that if you draw that trend line from there to here. You don't have a whole lot to confirm that yet, but you'd still want to draw it just to see what happens. And the bottom just falls out of that thing. Because what happens was they trapped the longs that thought it was time to go long again, and boom, off it goes. You actually come back here, you get a first entry and a second entry. Not a good location, and certainly congestion and not a very good signal bar. But it pushes lower, pulls back, and technically that looks like 1 leg up and then a correction. And so it looks like 2 legs back to the EMA, and that's such a bearish bar, but there's some support right there. So I'm not crazy about it. I just marked it so I would remember to talk about it. I don't think I would take that trade even as an aggressive trade because it could get you trapped. And you see it did bounce there, but it couldn't break higher, and it's because we're not done yet. But you don't know that. There's no way to know that we're done right there, not done right there. And we could have gone higher. But it drops on down. You get a first entry, then a second entry. And again, it's second entry short, and there's not much room to scalp out. However, you may have looked at this as 2 attempts to go higher that turns down off the trend line. So if you treated it like a failure, you might take it. But I marked it green again because I wanted to remember to talk about it, but I don't like it. We drop on down here. We finally get a close outside. We make a new low, and then we're just working sideways. I don't see any shorts I like in there, and I don't see any longs. And I think somebody asked about this in the forum. It's tempting to go short there, but it could have bounced. I mean, we did push through here, but it held again here, and you probably would have to adjust this just a hair. Maybe like that right there. And we bounced here 2 more times, 3 more times, 1, 2, 3. So that kind of erases this push through, and we could be looking at a reversal. So I don't like going short right there. I think it's way too aggressive. And of course, it runs down, and you come back here. This is just, you try to go higher once, twice, 3 times. So there's a little bit of a triple test right there. It does confirm that trend line. It's a fairly bearish bar. There's a hidden second entry. Notice the low. You try to go higher. Try to go lower once. You will go higher. And so that's a hidden second entry short. And there's a little bit of congestion here. So it's like a failed breakout as well. And the fact that it confirms that it's off the EMA, I like that trade. And that turns out to be a pretty good move down. I don't see anything else there. And that really takes us into after 2:30 before you get this short right here. And it's another one you might consider. It's not great setup, but it's a second entry short with the trend, and that's the first break of your trend line. But in the end, what happens is this was a little too steep, and you just flatten out into this blue one. So this is like a spike and channel down. That's what this is, and the channel ends up being the blue one. And how do you know that? You don't till you see it in the experience. So once I saw it continuing to trend so strongly, but outside the yellow, first thing I'm doing, I'm looking for another trend line. It didn't much matter because we were already into 2:30, but this could happen during the regular day. So you need to learn to see these, and with time and experience, you will. But for a while, you won't have a clue about that. And people will write and ask me, well, how'd you know it was going to go lower? I didn't. But my experience tells me to look for it, and when I see it, I'm going to trade it. So this is a skill. We're not pattern traders. So what we're doing is we're looking, and we know the rules. What price action tells us, and it holds true 80% or more of the time, but it's not 100%. So not only do you know what you're expecting, you want to see it before you trade it. So you don't just trade it because you were expecting it. So I hope that makes sense. But anyway, it's 30 minutes, much longer than I wanted, but it was that kind of day. And we had a good trend up and a good trend down. Have we bottomed out yet? We probably, let me just pull it up. Okay, here's our daily chart. I'm just going to give you a quick look at it. You can see we're kind of trending sideways, and we've actually kind of turned down now. But earlier today, this looked like a bullish inside bar, like we may go higher, or this bar did. We were already in oversold, but now you see we've overshot the oversold. So we could still go low yet. I don't see any reason to buy yet on the weekly chart, but if you get a trend on the daily, on the 2000 tick, obviously you got to trade it. But I don't see a reason to expect a reversal yet. I mean, other than we're in the oversold. So we're going to see a setup here that's probably going to take us higher, even if it's only a correction, and we may be turning into a bear trend. I don't know. But right now, this looks like sideways action that's oversold to the downside. So we'll see what happens. Usually when you fail out support across here, it's going to fail in reverse. How quickly and when, you just have to watch for the setup. But we know what to expect. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today, done for this week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next